Billy, you know something. What is it?
I'm scared, Pancho.
Bullshit. You ain't afraid of no man.
Good evening. The World Health Organization says Europe is now the epicenter of the global coronavirus pandemic.
There's something out there waiting for us. And it ain't no man.
798 people have now been infected, up by 208 since yesterday.
We're all gonna die.
It's often odd what people are afraid of. You know, people perceive danger in things like guns and bullets and...
Were the Martians dead, slain after all man's devices had failed by the humblest things upon the earth?
Well, in reality, things like diseases are actually fairly big killers.
Bacteria. Minute, invisible bacteria.
Well, I was more thinking about viruses, but the point is largely similar. Killers that you can't quite so easily defend yourself against with things like guns and bullets.
Directly the invaders arrived and drank and fed. Our microscopic allies attacked them. From that moment, they were doomed.
Even more bizarre, things like viruses are so small that they're about 1/10 of the size of the smallest thing that you can see under an optical microscope, but they still have it in their capability of killing you. So how dangerous is the coronavirus? You might remember a month or so ago, this was my assessment.
Orak, have you been listening to all this?
With interest.
What do you think?
I think you're quite right. A degree of apprehension is not inappropriate.
Now I actually live in a country under quarantine because of that virus. Now, it's one of those strange things. Let's just say there's a massive response to a viral outbreak when there's the very first case seen. And that completely shuts down the spread of the virus. Well, what would most people make of this? Don't they think that this was some massive overreaction? I mean, there was only ever one case. Now, why is there all this scaremongering from the lamestream media? You see, the bottom line is a prevented pandemic is indistinguishable from a pointless overreaction. So how can you tell the difference? Well, you've got to look at some actual data. And when I first looked at some of this data about a month or so ago, based on the handful or so of points from the spread of the virus within China and the death rate within China, a spread rate which has now been confirmed with outbreaks seen in country after country after country, it was very clear, even from first inspection, that this spread rate gave this virus legs and should be taken seriously. The uncontrolled spread rate was about, on average, one person spreads it to half a new person per day, or to one extra person every 2 days, which doesn't sound so bad until you do the maths and work out that from one person having it, it's only 2 months until the entire planet is infected. And with a mortality rate of a couple of percent, that would give you a death toll somewhere in the region of 200 million. That's the worst case scenario if you do nothing. Now, China had also looked at these numbers and they weren't overreacting when they quarantined a city the size of New York or London. Now, taking a look at how seriously other people have taken this has been a little depressing. Like Trump going around and saying that they only had 15 cases in America and most of them were getting better and it would soon be down to zero.
But we have a total of 15 people and they're in a process of recovering, with some already having fully recovered. Hopefully we're not going to have to spend so much because we really think we've done a great job in keeping it down to a minimum. We've had tremendous success beyond what, and we want to keep it that way. So we're at the low level. As they get better, we take them off the list so that we're going to be pretty soon at only 5 people. And we could be at just 1 or 2 people over the next short period of time.
Well, yes, if there was competent action taken, then this could have been prevented. But instead of there now being 15 cases in America, there are over 3,000. And those are 3,000 confirmed cases. The number of actual cases is probably at least an order of magnitude bigger than that. Just in the diagnosed cases, there has been a 1,000-fold increase in the number of cases in America. And that was over the period of about 2 weeks. And at this point, if you take no action, you will have roughly the entire population of America infected in about a month. And, worst case scenario, it kills about 6 million Americans. The time for the massive overreaction is when there were only 15 cases. Then you had a chance of shutting it down. Now the name of the game is more damage limitation. Or Elon Musk declaring that the coronavirus panic was done. Again, you only need to understand 3 points here. Number 1, the nature of virality. 2, that this is not a virus that we have any natural immunity to. And 3, that the more viral DNA there is out there in the gene pool, the more likely it is that the virus will pick up mutations. You see, there's so much of the virus out there now that it's not going away. Probably ever. You see, viruses, by their very nature, are tenacious little beasties. They've been on this planet since there's been life. They are survivors. And this is how they do it. When a mutation of a virus finds a weakness in an organism's defense, by trial and error, it spreads like crazy. And that means that the virus and its genes get everywhere. And those viral capsids can be pretty resilient little things as well. They can lay dormant in deep tissue. They can lay dormant in deep freezers of one sort or another, and so forth. Basically, if you get the outbreak and you shut it down almost instantly, you can get it all. If not, you're into the game of whack-a-mole, which gets out of hand very quickly, and your emphasis then shifts from winning to limiting your losses. And this is kind of where we are now. There is no treatment for the virus. If you get it, it's simply a roll of the dice on whether you live or die. And we'll come back to what your chances are like in a second. The number of people who medical intervention can help is limited, and this is because of the way that the virus gets you. It infects your respiratory system, and if it makes it all the way down to your lungs, it can spread very rapidly, and this is very bad news because the virus damages the walls of your lungs, which can lead to problems with bacterial infections. And if you get one of those infections on a large organ like the lungs, it can kill you pretty quickly. But that's almost the only thing that you can treat here, is if you get a bacterial infection in your lungs, you have a chance of doing something with antibiotics. If it's the virus growth that damages your lungs, there's really nothing that can be done. So pretty much, you get it, you roll the dice. Rich and poor alike.
But random, dispassionate, fair to rich and poor alike.
What are your odds? Well, if you're young, they're not so bad. If you're old, not so much. Young people, you're looking at about 1 in 1,000 dying. Old people, you're looking at about 1 in 6. And overall, about 2 to 3 out of every 100 people who get this die from it. Which is why this virus very quickly became the leading cause of death in places like Italy. Now, if you get it, there's really not a lot you can do. However, you do have some control over whether you get it or not, and if you do get it, if you spread it or not. Viruses are mostly spread by touching wet bits of your face and the such like, which have viral particles in them, which are so small that they can't even be seen with a regular microscope. And then you inadvertently touch something, somebody else touches them, then touches their face, the nose or the eyes or something like that. Or when someone coughs or sneezes, they can put out some of those viral particles in an aerosol. And if you breathe those in, that's a problem. So avoiding people is the easiest way to stop spreading the virus. On a macro scale, quarantining cities of 10 million people or countries of 60-odd million people are sensible measures under these circumstances. Because currently, we're only looking at phase 1 of the coronavirus. You see, the chances of the virus mutating basically scales with the amount of viral DNA in the ecosystem. And there's millions of times more viral DNA out there than there used to be a month or so ago. Now, most of those mutations to the virus, of course, will not go anywhere because they will inhibit the virus in some way, shape, or form, and those will die out. However, some of those mutations will make the virus spread better, and those will propagate disproportionately better through the ecosystem. And the worst case scenario is, in doing that, the virus also becomes more dangerous, more lethal, it ends up killing more people. Now, don't count on summer for killing this thing either. It's likely that summer will decrease the spread rate, but it's also likely, just because there's so much of the virus out there now, that it will survive in some shape or form till next winter. We really don't have any natural immunity to this coronavirus, which ironically means that if you do get it now in this mild form and survive, then you will have some immunity to future coronavirus mutants. Although it's not a sure thing, it's just you will have more resistance to it than if you never had the coronavirus in the first place. But, of course, if you do get the coronavirus, that means that you increase the chances of spreading it to other people. Me, about 2 weeks ago, when the first cases were being diagnosed here, I did actually get flu-like symptoms, which was probably the flu. After all, it's winter, and those things are sort of fairly common in winter. And now it got better, and then shortly after they declared the state of emergency, I got similar flu-like symptoms. But then again, this is now coming on to springtime, there's pollen in the air, and it's fairly common that I get an itchy throat this time of year. So, I mean, this is the thing. Is it actually worth getting tested? Well, for me, no. Because there's no actionable data that comes out of the test. If you're going to die from it, there's really not a lot that can be done for you, right? I mean, the only thing that can really be done is if you get a lung infection, they can give you some antibiotics.
There's something out there waiting for us. And it ain't no man. We're all gonna die.
Not quite. There are rays of hope here, and they come, oddly enough, from where the virus originated in the first place. You see, China actually took these draconian measures, probably later than they should have done, but still fairly early on. And because of this, they managed to get on top of the spread of the virus. And so, about 6 weeks after they first started getting these cases, they got on top of it. For the rest of the world, it's not like that yet. We've got to do those draconian measures ourselves to stop the virus from spreading. There will be some who say, but look, it's not so bad in China. Well, yeah, the reason it's not so bad in China is because they took these measures. And now, I mean, we've just got to take those measures ourselves, because if we don't, the simple reality is basically everyone on the planet will have been infected by this virus within about 2 months. So yeah, I'm in quarantine now. But don't feel bad for me. Most of Europe will probably go this way in a week or so, and most of America a week or so after that. Hell, America declared a state of emergency a few days ago. And for those who think this is a massive overreaction, let's just play the game of worst case scenario for a second here. Let's just say no one does anything, which means that, let's say my audience is fairly youngish people. They all have a 1 in 1,000 chance of dying. My videos pull in, say, about 100,000 views in the first 24 hours, which would mean that 100 people just from my audience alone would die from this. And for me, damn straight, I'm willing to spend a couple of weeks with reduced contact with other people and increased hygiene to do my part in reducing that number by several orders of magnitude. So with that, I wish you good luck with the pandemics to come, and I'll keep my fingers crossed that we all come out of this okay. Many thanks to all those who support this channel through Patreon. It's greatly appreciated. And thanks for watching.